Welcome to the module on measurement. In this presentation, we will review the measurement process and its logic by describing its major steps. And by the end of the presentation, you'll be able to apply your knowledge of measurement to operationalize a concept. So what is measurement? It is the process of assigning numbers or labels to represent conceptual properties. All of you encounter measurement in your daily lives. Take, for example, a film review. So we have the conceptual property being represented, the quality of a movie. We have the unit of analysis, the movie, and we have a rating system, the star rating. While this is not answering a research question, it is a measurable question. How good is the movie? So we have an abstract concept, the quality of a movie, and we have created a concrete way to observe that concept, the star rating. So in sociology, we measure concepts, and to follow scientific norms, we must very carefully describe what we mean and how we measure these concepts. Similar to the film rating example, we move from abstract concepts to specific, concrete ways of observing them. Here's a figure to illustrate the process. As you read in the book, we first conceptualize the concept. So how do we define it? In some cases, using a dictionary can help, but when working with abstract concepts such as social capital, if you'll remember, that's the example from Dr. Bro's research on sports participation and academic achievement. So if we want to look at this abstract concept, we likely have to review the sociological literature, so other studies on this topic, to see how other experts have defined it. Once we have conceptualized the concept, so the first two steps in this illustration, the next step is to operationalize it, steps 3 and 4. Operationalizing it is identifying ways to observe variation in the concept. So for example, identifying bad movies from good movies. One way to do this is to specify empirical indicators. An empirical indicator is a proxy for a concept such as a questionnaire item in a survey. For our movie example, an empirical indicator would be the star rating system. Let's look at some examples to help our understanding of these two steps. We'll look at how to conceptualize and operationalize group cohesiveness. A classic definition of group cohesiveness is offered by Dorwin Cartwright's 1968 article on small groups. He conceptualizes group cohesiveness as the degree to which the members of a group desire to remain in the group. A cohesive group is one that sticks together, one whose members are bonded to one another and to the group as a whole. So we have the concept, we've defined it, but how do we operationalize this concept? How do we measure it? First, we need to decide which small groups we will study. Can you think of possible groups? Small groups could be groups of people who share something in common that helps bond them to each other. For example, a sports team. So pause the presentation to come up with 2 or 3 possible groups. Okay, so while I can't ask what groups you came up with, I can present what I came up with myself. Here are some examples. So sports team, as I mentioned already, a community board group, an adolescent peer group, a student government committee, and a class of students. Did you come up with something similar, or maybe a small group that we can add to this list? So now we have a list of small groups that we could research. So how will we operationalize, measure, cohesiveness in order to identify groups as more or less cohesive? Remember that we have defined cohesiveness as the degree to which members of a group desire to remain in the group. I'll provide an example and then let's see if you can come up with another way to operationalize cohesiveness. So let's say the group has regular meetings, like a community board group that meets every week. One example would be to track the attendance of these meetings. So the empirical indicator would be attendance of group members at each meeting. Now we can say that we have operationalized cohesiveness by finding the percentage of group members who attend all or all but one meeting per month. Say community group A has 100% attendance. All members attend all of the meetings, while community group B has 60% attendance. We can say that group A is more cohesive than group B. So we have operationalized cohesiveness by finding the percentage of group members who attend all or all but one meeting per month. We have measured and we have a measurable and understandable observation of a fuzzy concept, cohesiveness. However, the same empirical indicator would not work for different groups. This empirical indicator would be fine for a community board group where attendance is not mandatory, but what about a sports team? If you stop showing up to practices, you'll probably be kicked off the team. So let's see if you can come up with an empirical indicator to measure the cohesiveness of a sports team. Pause the presentation for a few minutes and think of another empirical indicator that could operationalize cohesiveness for a sports team. Okay, let's take a look at some other possible empirical indicators. Here's one possible way. We could operationalize cohesiveness by looking at the degree of communication with group members or among group members. Here, the empirical indicator could be a question asking all group members to report the total number of times that they telephoned or sent a text to any other group member during a designated week. So after conducting our question, we find that the basketball team sent 5 calls or texts to each other in a week, and the softball team sent 20 calls or texts in a week. So according to this empirical indicator, which team is more cohesive? The softball team. Another way to measure cohesiveness among team members could be to measure how much group members enjoy each other. So here, an empirical indicator could be a question asking each group member to rate how much he or she likes every other member of the group. You could provide this question with a scale such as the following. This is also called a Likert scale. So what were the results? The basketball team on average had a 7, meaning they liked each other very much, while the softball team was 6, just a little bit below the basketball team. So using this empirical indicator, we see that the basketball team would be more cohesive. So this is a good example of why we sometimes need more than one empirical indicator to accurately measure a concept. In the previous example, we thought that the softball team was more cohesive, since they communicated with each other more often. But maybe the basketball team dormed together, so there's less need to communicate by cell phone. If we had only used the first measure, we might have arrived at the mistaken conclusion that the softball team was more cohesive than the basketball team. In this week's discussion board, you will come up with a way to operationalize the concept of altruism. A classmate of yours will then come up with an empirical indicator for your concept. You'll find full instructions in the discussion board, but I encourage you to return to this presentation as it will help you with the activity. This is the end of the presentation. Continue to the next module item and exercise to quiz your understanding of levels of measurement.